Mom stole my inheritance and I got revenge in court. Me, 38F, and my husband John, 40M, had been married for 12 years. We had two beautiful children, Emily, 10F, and Alex, 8M. Life was good, or so I thought. Little did I know that my seemingly perfect world was about to come crashing down around me. My family had always been a bit dysfunctional, to say the least. My mother, Karen, 60F, was a narcissistic control freak who had always tried to manipulate and belittle me. My father, Tom, 62M, was a spineless enabler who would never stand up to her. They had always favored my older brother, Jake, 42M, over me, showering him with love and attention while treating me like an afterthought. Despite the strained relationship with my parents, I had always tried to maintain a cordial relationship with them for the sake of my children. I wanted them to have a relationship with their grandparents, even if they didn't always treat me fairly. One day, my mother called me out of the blue and insisted that we come over for dinner. I was hesitant, knowing how she could be, but John convinced me that it would be good for the kids to spend time with their grandparents. Little did we know, this would be the beginning of a nightmare. When we arrived at my parents' house, everything seemed normal at first. My mother had cooked a lavish meal, and my father was doting on my brother as usual. However, as the evening wore on, things took a dark turn. My mother started making snide comments about my appearance, criticizing my parenting skills, and generally trying to make me feel inadequate. This was nothing new, but it was particularly hurtful in front of my children. As if that wasn't bad enough, my brother Jake started joining in on the verbal abuse. He made cruel jokes about my weight and insinuated that John was only with me for my money. I was stunned and hurt, but I tried to keep my composure for the sake of my kids. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my mother dropped a bombshell. She announced that they had decided to write Emily and Alex out of their will and leave everything to Jake and his children. She claimed that it was because we had failed as parents and didn't deserve to inherit anything. I was livid. How dare they treat my children like that? They were innocent kids who had done nothing wrong. John tried to reason with them, but they were adamant in their decision. I had had enough. I grabbed Emily and Alex and stormed out of the house, vowing never to speak to my parents or brother again. As we drove home, I could see the hurt and confusion on my children's faces. It broke my heart to see them suffer because of my family's pettiness and cruelty. For weeks, I was consumed by anger and hurt. I couldn't believe that my own family had treated us with such disrespect and callousness. John tried to be supportive, but he didn't truly understand the depth of my pain. One night, after the kids had gone to bed, I broke down in tears. I confided in John about how my parents had always favored Jake and made me feel inadequate. He held me close and promised that we would get through this together. In the days that followed, I tried to process what had happened. I reached out to a therapist to help me work through the trauma of my family's betrayal. She helped me realize that I didn't need their approval or their money to be happy and successful. With her guidance, I started to rebuild my self-esteem and focus on the things that truly mattered, my husband and my children. I vowed to break the cycle of abuse and create a loving, supportive environment for my family. Despite my efforts to move on, the hurt and anger lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that my parents and brother had wronged me and my children in the most despicable way possible. One day, while scrolling through social media, I saw a post from Jake bragging about a new luxury car he had purchased. It was a slap in the face, knowing that the money he was flaunting was meant to be my children's inheritance. That was the final straw. I knew I had to take action. I spent weeks researching and planning my revenge. I pored over legal documents and consulted with attorneys, determined to find a way to make my family pay for their cruelty. Finally, I stumbled upon a loophole. It turned out that my parents' will was not properly executed, which meant that it could be contested in court. I knew that this was my chance to fight back and secure my children's rightful inheritance. With the help of a skilled lawyer, I filed a lawsuit challenging the validity of my parents' will. I knew it would be a long and arduous process, but I was prepared to fight tooth and nail for my children's future. As the legal battle ensued, tensions within my family reached a boiling point. My parents and brother lashed out, accusing me of being greedy and ungrateful. They tried to intimidate me and make me back down, but I remained resolute. The court proceedings were grueling. My parents and brother hired a team of expensive lawyers to try and crush me. They attempted to paint me as an unfit mother and a gold digger, but I stood my ground. In the end, after months of emotional turmoil and legal wrangling, the judge ruled in my favor. The will was deemed invalid, and my children were reinstated as beneficiaries of my parents' estate. The victory in court was bittersweet. While I had secured my children's rightful inheritance, the damage to my relationship with my family was irreparable. My parents and brother were furious. They refused to speak to me or acknowledge my existence. They even went so far as to try and appeal the ruling, but their efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. As the dust settled, I found myself in a strange position. I had inherited a substantial amount of wealth from my parents' estate, but at the cost of losing what little family I had left. I wrestled with feelings of guilt and sadness, even as I tried to convince myself that I had done the right thing for my children. It was a bitter victory, tinged with the pain of broken relationships and shattered trust. In the aftermath of the legal battle, I struggled to find closure. I was haunted by the memories of my family's cruelty and the pain they had inflicted on me and my children. I continued seeing a therapist, who helped me work through the complex emotions of grief, anger, and betrayal. Slowly, I began to heal and find peace within myself. Looking back on the ordeal, I have no regrets about the actions I took to protect my children's future. While the price was high, and the scars may never fully heal, I know that I did what was necessary to break the cycle of abuse and toxic behavior that had plagued my family for generations. My children are now grown, and they have inherited not only the financial wealth from my parents' estate but also the strength and resilience that came from our struggle. They understand the importance of standing up for what is right and fighting for the ones you love. As for me, I have found peace in the knowledge that I gave my children the love, support, and security that I never had growing up. And in the end, that is worth more than any inheritance or material possession. Break story 2. Me, 35F, and my husband, 37M, have been together for 12 years, married for 8. We have 2 kids, a daughter, 7F, and a son, 5M. Our marriage has had its ups and downs, but overall, we've been happy together. That is, until my mother-in-law, 62F, came into the picture. My mother-in-law, let's call her Karen, has always been a bit of a handful. She's the epitome of a narcissistic parent, always putting her own needs before anyone else's, even her own children's. When my husband and I first got together, she was initially against our relationship, claiming that I wasn't good enough for her precious son. Over the years, Karen has made countless attempts to interfere in our marriage and our family life. She's constantly criticizing my parenting style, my homemaking skills, and even my appearance. She likes to remind me that her son could have done better, and that I should be grateful she allowed me into her family. Despite her behavior, we've tried to maintain a cordial relationship for the sake of our children. After all, she's their grandmother, and we wanted them to have a relationship with her. That's why we agreed to let her watch the kids occasionally when we needed a date night or had to work late. It all started a few months ago when our dog, a lovable golden retriever named Buddy, started acting strangely. He seemed lethargic and wouldn't eat his food. At first, we thought it was just a temporary illness, but when his condition didn't improve, we took him to the vet. The vet did some tests and delivered the shocking news: Buddy had been poisoned with antifreeze. We were devastated and couldn't fathom who would want to harm our beloved pet. The vet warned us that if we didn't act quickly, Buddy might not make it. After rushing Buddy to the animal hospital for emergency treatment, we started to piece together the clues. The only people who had access to our home and could have potentially poisoned Buddy were my in-laws, who had been watching the kids in the house while we were away on a weekend trip. At first, we didn't want to believe that Karen could be capable of such a despicable act. But as we dug deeper, we discovered some disturbing evidence. Security camera footage from our home showed Karen entering the kitchen and pouring something into Buddy's food bowl when she thought no one was looking. Enraged and heartbroken, we confronted Karen about what she had done. To our horror, she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she nonchalantly admitted to poisoning Buddy, claiming that the dog was a nuisance and that she was doing us a favor by getting rid of him. "That mangy mutt was always barking and shedding hair all over the place," she sneered. "You should be thanking me for taking care of that problem for you." We were speechless. How could someone be so callous and cruel, especially towards an innocent animal that was part of our family? My husband, who had always been close to his mother, was devastated by her actions. "How could you do this, Mom?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. "Buddy was a part of our family, and you tried to kill him just because you found him inconvenient?" Karen simply shrugged and said, "He was just a dog." "You're making too big a deal out of this." At that moment, something snapped inside me. All the years of enduring Karen's narcissistic behavior and constant belittling came rushing back. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Just a dog? Buddy was more than just a pet to us. He was a loyal companion and a member of our family, I shouted. What you did was cruel, unforgivable, and illegal. You poisoned an innocent animal because you couldn't be bothered to respect our wishes." Karen scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. It's not like I killed a human being." My husband was livid. "That's it, Mom. You've gone too far this time. I don't know who you are anymore. The mother I knew would never harm an animal, let alone one that meant so much to my family." Karen sneered, "Well, maybe if you had listened to me and married someone more suitable, none of this would have happened." That was the final straw. We told her to get out of our house and never come back. She left without a shred of remorse, leaving us to pick up the pieces of our shattered family. In the following days, we focused all our energy on Buddy's recovery. Thankfully, the veterinarians were able to save his life, but the emotional scars ran deep. Our kids were traumatized, and we had to explain to them what their grandmother had done. As if her actions weren't despicable enough, Karen began a campaign of harassment and intimidation against us. She would call us incessantly, leaving cruel voicemails and threatening to take legal action if we didn't allow her to see the kids. One day, we came home to find our front door egged and a letter from Karen's lawyer demanding visitation rights. She claimed that by denying her access to her grandchildren, we were violating her rights as a grandparent. We were shocked and outraged. After what she had done to her family, she had the audacity to demand visitation rights? We knew we had to take legal action to protect ourselves and our children from her toxic influence. The situation escalated rapidly. Karen began showing up unannounced at our house, pounding on the door and demanding to see the kids. We had to call the police on multiple occasions to have her removed from our property. During one of her unannounced visits, she even tried to force her way into our home, prompting a physical altercation with my husband. It was a nightmare, and we knew we couldn't go on living like this. We needed to take drastic measures to keep our family safe. We hired a lawyer and filed for a restraining order against Karen. The court case was long and emotionally draining, but in the end, the judge granted us a permanent restraining order, prohibiting Karen from coming within 500 feet of our home or our children's schools. The judge also ruled that Karen had forfeited her grandparental rights due to her actions and her inability to prioritize the well-being of our children. It was a bittersweet victory, as we knew it meant severing ties with her completely, but it was necessary for our family's safety and peace of mind. Additionally, we pressed charges against Karen for animal cruelty and property damage. She was eventually found guilty and ordered to pay a hefty fine, as well as serve community service. The judge also mandated that she undergo psychological evaluation and counseling. While the legal battles were draining, both emotionally and financially, we knew we had done the right thing. Karen's actions had proven that she was a toxic and dangerous presence in our lives, and we could no longer allow her to inflict her brand of cruelty and manipulation on our family. The emotional aftermath of Karen's actions was perhaps the most challenging aspect to overcome. Our children, especially our daughter, were deeply affected by their grandmother's betrayal. They had nightmares and developed anxiety around animals, fearing that someone might hurt them too. We sought family counseling to help us all process the trauma and rebuild our sense of trust and security. It was a long and arduous journey, but slowly, we began to heal and find our way back to each other. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far Karen's narcissism and cruelty pushed her. What started as a seemingly innocuous act of poisoning our beloved pet spiraled into a nightmare that nearly tore our family apart. But through it all, we remained strong and united. We refused to let Karen's toxic behavior dictate our lives or dictate the values we wanted to instill in our children. While the scars may never fully heal, we emerged from this experience with a deeper appreciation for one another and a renewed commitment to protecting our family from those who wish to harm us, no matter who they may be. In the end, our love and resilience triumphed over Karen's narcissism and cruelty. And for that, we are eternally grateful.